This is Wikipedia to fall asleep to. Close your eyes, relax, and let this calm voice lead you softly towards sleep. Tonight's first topic is Hans Huber, composer. Hans Huber was a Swiss composer. Between 1894 and 1918, he composed 5 operas. He also wrote a set of 24 preludes and fugues, Op. 100, for piano 4 hands in all major and minor keys. Biography: he was born in Eppenburg-Werschnau, canton of Solothurn. The son of an amateur musician, Huber became a chorister and showed an early talent for the piano. In 1870, he entered Leipzig Conservatory, where his teachers included Oscar Paul. In 1877, he returned to Basel to teach, but did not obtain a post in the conservatory there until 1889. 7 years later, he became director. Among his notable students were Hans Munch and Hermann Suter. In 1889, Huber wrote a major symphony, which was conducted in December 1889 by Friedrich Heger, and whose full score survives. He wrote in all 9 symphonies, 8 acknowledged and several concertos, 2 for violin and 4 for piano. During his last years, he lived in Minusio in Villa Genia. He died at Locarno. Works: Huber's First Symphony in D minor, subtitled Tell-Sinfonie, has a slight programmatic element, derived from the story of the Swiss national hero William Tell. The symphony is somewhat similar in style and formal restraint to Brahms, although there is perhaps a foreshadowing of Sibelius in some of the orchestral textures. Huber's piano concertos are slightly unusual for the form in that they have, with the exception of the second concerto, like Brahms' second piano concerto in B-flat major, 4 movements, scherzos, are included in addition to the usual fast, slow, and fast tempo movements. Symphony No. 1 in D minor, Tell-Sinfonie, Op. 63, Symphony in a major without opus, premiered 1889, conducted by Friedrich Heger, then withdrawn. Symphony No. 2 in E minor, Berkelin Symphony, C. Es Lach Dio, Op. 115, Symphony No. 3, in C major, Heroic, for soprano and orchestra, Op. 118. Symphony No. 4 in A academic in the manner of a concerto grosso, for 2 string orchestras, piano and organ. Symphony No. 5 in F major, The Fiddler of G Mund, also romantisch, dedicated to Henry Mardo. Symphony No. 6 in a major, Op. 134, dedicated to Fritz Steinbach. Symphony No. 7 in D minor, Swiss, 1917, premiered 1917 in Basel, conducted by Hermann Suter, published 1922. Symphony No. 8 in F, Spring Symphony, Concertos, piano Concerto No. 1 in C minor, Op. 36, 1878, 4 movements, Violin Concerto No. 1 in G minor, Op. 40, 1879, 3 movements, Violin Concerto No. 2 in D minor, Wo 1886, 1 movement, Piano Concerto No. 2 in G major, Op. 107, 1891, 3 movements, Piano Concerto No. 3 in D major, Op. 113, 1899, 4 movements, Piano Concerto No. 4 in B-flat major, 1911, 4 movements, Other orchestral works: Roman Carnival, Wo o ein Lustspielouverture, Op. 50, Symphonic Introduction to the Opera Der Simplicius and Das Vaterland Symphonic Ode, Serenade No. 1, Op. 86, Summer Nights Serenade No. 2, Wo o Winter Nights Operas Weltfrühling, libretto by Rudolf Wackernagel, 1894, Kudrun der Simplicius, libretto by Albrecht Mendelssohn Bartholdy, 1899, 1912, 1915, Freude die Meer, libretto by Fritz Carmen, 1913, Der Glessernburg, unfinished, libretto by Gian Bundy, 1915, Die schöne Belinda, libretto by Gian Bundy, 1916, Stage Musik zu einem Festspiel, text by Rudolf Wackernagel, 1892, Der Basler Bund, 1501, text by Rudolf Wackernagel, 1901, Der Weihnachtsstern, text by Meinrad Leonard, 1916, Oratorios der Heilige Weissagung und Erfüllung Masses Missa Festiva in E-flat, Klein Einsiedler Mess, Missa Festiva in honorem Beati Mariae Virginis D major, Gross Einsiedler Mess, Missa Festiva in honorem Beati Mariae Virginis F major, male choir and organ, Missa in honorem Sancti Ursi ein Festmess Cantatas Außernung, male choir, soloists and orchestra, 1879 Pandora mixed choir, soprano and orchestra, 1883 Keenes, male choir, alto and orchestra, 1890 Heldenaren male choir, boys or female choir, soprano, baritone and orchestra, 1909 to 1913. Cantate zum Jubiläum der Universität Basel mixed choir, male choir, boys choir, soloists, orchestra and organ, 1910. Mirfat Ode for male choir, soloist and orchestra. Other choral works: 25 male choirs, a cappella Serbian and Romanian folk songs. For mixed choir, a cappella chamber music quintet for piano and winds. Op. 136 Sextet for piano and winds, 9 violin sonatas, 4 cello sonatas, 4 piano trios, 2 piano, quartets, 2 piano quintets, trio fantasia for piano, violin and cello recordings. The Swedish label Sterling has released all of Huber's symphonies, except for the 1889 A Major Symphony noted above, some tone poems, and 2 of the piano concertos, Nos. 1 and 3. There have also been several recent recordings from Huber's substantial output of chamber works, including at least one of his cello sonatas and 3 CDs, as of 2012, with violin sonatas of his. One of the early recordings of Huber's music was an LP of his first piano quartet, Waldlieder, with Hans-Heinz Schneeberger playing the violin. Let your mind wander now to Robert Rait. Sir Robert Sangster Rait was a Scottish historian, historiographer royal and principal of the University of Glasgow. Early life: Rait was born in 1874 in Narborough, Leicestershire, to Scottish parents, although the family moved shortly afterwards to his parents' hometown of Aberdeen. He was educated at the University of Aberdeen, graduating M.A. in 1894. He then worked briefly as an assistant to the professor of logic at the university, publishing his first book, Universities of Aberdeen, a History, in 1895, before being elected to an exhibition in modern history at New College, Oxford, in 1896. He was awarded first-class honors, won the Stanhope Prize, and was elected a Fellow of the college the same year. He worked as a lecturer at the college for 3 years, and in 1903 became a tutor. Glasgow in 1913. Rait was appointed to the newly created chair in Scottish history and literature at the University of Glasgow, funded through the proceeds of the 1911 Scottish Exhibition of National History, Art and Industry, held in the adjacent Kelvingrove Park. In this role, he sought to engage more closely with students than was traditional for academics at the time, inviting students to tea at his home. From 1915 to 1918, during the First World War, Rait worked at the War Trade Intelligence Department in London and was appointed a CBE in 1918. In 1919, he was appointed Historiographer Royal of Scotland, also serving for a time as Dean of the Faculty of Arts in the university. He became a prominent figure in the intellectual and cultural life of the city, frequently contributing letters and articles to the Glasgow Herald, often anonymously. In 1929, Rait succeeded Sir Donald MacAllister as principal of the university. In this role, he sought continue the close relationship he had developed with students as a professor, relocating the principal's office to the main building of the university, where it remains today, making his time more freely available to students and staff, and frequently entertaining guests at the principal's lodging. He was an immensely popular figure with students. After being knighted in 1933, he was met on his return from London to Glasgow Central Station by hundreds of students and escorted to the university in a carriage drawn by blues and led by the band of the OTC. The Depression of the 1930s had a heavy effect on the university financially and on the principal's health. In September 1935, he developed a serious illness, during which time he was largely unable to carry out his duties and was deputized at court by the rector, Sir Ian Colquhoun. He died at the principal's lodging on 25th of May, 1936. Rait's research generally maintained a Scottish focus, particularly with a reference to the politics of pre-Union Scotland and its relationship with England, although he also completed biographies of Field Marshal Viscount Gough and Field Marshal Sir Frederick Haynes. Publications. Personal life. Rait married Ruth Bridge in 1908, with whom he had 2 daughters. He was a member of the Athenaeum in London, the Glasgow Art Club, the Western Club, Glasgow, and the University Club, Edinburgh. Our next topic tonight is The Wizard and I. The Wizard and I is a musical number from the hit musical Wicked. It is primarily a solo number for the character of Elphaba, serving as her I Want song, though the character Madame Morrible also sings in the introduction to the song. Summary: the song is performed in the beginning of the first act of the musical. In it, Madame Morrible tells Elphaba of her talents and tells her that she will arrange a meeting with the wizard. This begins Elphaba's desire to be accepted despite her skin color, with the aid of the wizard, whom she still believes to be genuine, and able to help her with all the discrimination she has been dealing with. Elphaba also sings about redeeming herself in her father, Freck Spars, and her sister, Nessarose's eyes. Also, Elphaba dreams about becoming a new person, not on the outside, but doing great deeds in league with the wizard and forming Oz's favorite team. The Wizard and I features the unlimited theme present throughout the musical. In this piece, Elphaba prophesizes a celebration throughout Oz regarding her, though she does not know it regards her death at the end of the musical, after being melted by Dorothy, which Elphaba ironically sings about in saying that she is so happy I could melt. She also imagines that when people see me they will scream from love, not fear. Toward the song's climax, she declares that she will be the center of a celebration throughout Oz that occurs in the show's opening. The song appears in the first part of Universal Pictures' two-part film adaptation of Wicked, released on November 22, 2024, sung by Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba and Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible. It was released on the same day as part of the soundtrack album Wicked, the soundtrack by Republic Records and Verve Records. Other versions, the original German recording of this song, Der Zauberer und ich, is sung by Dutch actress Willemijn Verkerk. She sings this song in 3 languages: German, Dutch, and English. In an interview, Verkerk said that for her, The Wizard and I is the hardest song for her to sing in the English productions. This is not the case for the German and Dutch productions, where No Good Deed was considerably harder. John Barrowman has a reworking of the song for his self-titled album John Barrowman, titled The Doctor and I, which is an exclusive bonus track on iTunes. Ariana Grande, who plays Glinda in the 2-part film adaptation of the musical, performed the song on the 2018 TV special, A Very Wicked Halloween. Ben Platt, son of Wicked producer Mark Platt, recorded a cover of the song for the album of MCC Theater's 25th annual Miscast Gala, and performed it at the live event itself in April 2025. Our next topic tonight is Brian Lenihan Snr. Brian Patrick Lenihan was an Irish Fianna Fáil politician who served in a number of ministerial positions spanning 4 decades from the 1960s to 1990s, and was Tánaiste from 1987 to 1990. He served as a Teachtadála TD from 1961 to 1973, and from 1977 to 1995, and was a senator for the Industrial and Commercial Panel from 1957 to 1961, and 1973 to 1977. He also served as a member of the European Parliament (MEP) for the Wairachtas from 1973 to 1977. In the 1990 presidential election, he unsuccessfully stood as Fianna Fáil's presidential candidate. He was a member of a family political dynasty. His father, Patrick Lenihan, and sister both followed him into Dáil Éireann, his sister Mary O'Rourke sitting in cabinet with him. 2 of his sons, Brian Lenihan Jr. and Conor Lenihan, became TDs in the 1990s. Brian Lenihan Jr. served as Minister for Finance, and Conor was Minister of State in the government of Taoiseach Brian Cohen. 2 phrases associated with Lenihan Snr, no problem and on mature recollection, entered the Irish political lexicon. Early life: born in Dundalk, County Louth, Lenihan was the son of Patrick Lenihan and Anne Scanlon. His father had been active in the Irish Republican Army, which saw action during the Irish War of Independence and the Irish Civil War. He had been an admirer of Michael Collins and took the pro-treaty side in 1922, before later returning to his studies and qualifying as a teacher. Lenihan, who was one of 5 children, grew up in Athlone. He was educated at Marist College in the town, before later studying law at University College Dublin Ucht, where he was actively involved in the Law Society as a committee member, and also played football for UCD, scoring against Sligo Rovers in the 1952-1953 FAI Cup. He later qualified as a barrister from King's Inns. He then practiced law for a few years before becoming a full-time politician. Beginnings: Lenihan first entered politics in 1954, when he ran as a Fianna Fáil candidate in Longford, Westmeath, in that year's general election. Of the 4 Fianna Fáil candidates, Lenihan was the only one not to be elected. 3 years later, Lenihan contested the 1957 general election, this time in the Roscommon constituency. Although he received more first preferences than any of the other Fianna Fáil candidates, he lost out on a Dáil seat once again. In spite of this, he was elected to the Seanad for the Industrial and Commercial Panel in 1957. After 4 years as a senator, Lenihan finally secured a seat in Dáil Éireann, following his success at the 1961 general election in Roscommon. He had the distinction of being made a parliamentary secretary on his first day in the Dáil as a TD, serving under both Minister for Lands Micheál O'Acute Moraine and Minister for Justice Charles Yahui. Minister for Justice, a cabinet reshuffle saw Lenihan join the cabinet of Sion Lemas in 1964 as Minister for Justice. His predecessor in the office, Charles Yahui, systematically reviewed, repealed, or amended acts dating back 700 years in the single largest reform of the Irish Civil and Criminal Code ever undertaken. Lenihan carried the legislative program, covering everything from repealing medieval laws to granting succession rights to married women. As minister, it was Lenihan who repealed Ireland's notorious censorship laws. Controversially, he also suggested that Ireland should rejoin the Commonwealth of Nations, though it is unclear whether that suggestion actually reflected his opinion, or whether he was simply raising the issue at Lemas's request to gauge public reaction. Minister for Education in 1968, Lemas's successor, Jack Lynch, appointed Lenihan as Minister for Education. As minister, he controversially proposed the merger of Dublin's, then 2 universities, Trinity College Dublin TCD and University College Dublin Ucht. The scheme was abandoned after mass opposition, Lenihan famously being forced to flee student protests in Trinity through a toilet window. Lenihan was also minister during a 19-day secondary teachers' strike in February 1969. Minister for Transport and Power following the 1969 general election. Fianna Fáil returned to power for a 4th successive term of office. Lenihan had hopes of further promotion within the cabinet. However, his appointment as Minister for Transport and Power was largely seen as a demotion. Minister for Foreign Affairs in 1973, Patrick Hillary was appointed as Ireland's European Commissioner upon the Irish entry to the European Economic Community. Lenihan then finally secured his much sought-after portfolio, that of Minister for Foreign Affairs. His tenure was short-lived, as the government fell and a new Fine Gael Labour Party government took office following the 1973 general election. Political return: Lenihan also dramatically lost his Roscommon, Leitrim seat. He once again became a senator, becoming his party's leader in the upper house. In 1973, he was appointed a member of the second delegation from the Wairachtas to the European Parliament. He moved his political base from rural Roscommon to Dublin West, where he was elected as a TD at the 1977 general election, which saw a landslide victory for Fianna Fáil. Jack Lynch appointed him Minister for Forestry and Fisheries. At Lynch's retirement in 1979, Fianna Fáil saw a leadership battle between Charles Yahui, the radical Republican candidate, and George Colley, the party establishment candidate and mild Republican. Lenihan dismissed the choice as being between a knave and a fool. He also described himself as being the X in OXO. He was believed to have backed Colley. Years later, he claimed he had actually supported Yahui, but not everyone accepted this assertion. Yahui, seeking to weaken the faction supporting Colley, appointed Lenihan as Minister for Foreign Affairs, a post he held until Fianna Fáil lost power in 1981. His period in foreign affairs was overshadowed by a comment made after an Anglo-Irish summit between Yahui and British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, when he spoke of Britain and Ireland being able to bring about Irish unity within 10 years, a comment which infuriated the British and Northern Ireland Unionists, and which undid much of the goodwill achieved by the summit. His comments, at a time of major problems within Northern Ireland, with the Provisional IRA and Irish National Liberation Army campaigns in full swing along with Ulster Defence Association and other loyalists conducting reprisals, were widely criticized in the Irish media as insensitive, especially as Irish unity had not even been on the agenda of the summit. One newspaper columnist commented simply, "There goes Brian, pointlessly talking himself into trouble again." In 1982, when Fianna Fáil regained power for what would prove only 10 months, Lenihan was appointed Minister for Agriculture, the announcement in the Dáil being greeted by a sustained round of laughter on the opposition benches. Anglo-Irish agreement, opposition in opposition, Lenihan and Yahui attracted some international criticism when, against the advice of senior Irish-American politicians Senator Edward Kennedy and Speaker Tip O'Neill, they campaigned against the Anglo-Irish agreement, which the government of Taoiseach Garret Fitzgerald had signed with the British government of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The agreement gave the Republic of Ireland an advisory role in the governance of Northern Ireland. In 1987, Fianna Fáil returned to power, and Lenihan was for the third and final time appointed Minister for Foreign Affairs, with the additional post of Tánaiste. In power, Yahui and Lenihan reversed their opposition to the Anglo-Irish agreement, Lenihan attending meetings of the Anglo-Irish Conference, which the Republic of Ireland's Foreign Minister and the British Secretary of State for Northern Ireland co-chaired. liver transplant Lenihan's last period as Minister for Foreign Affairs was overshadowed by his serious ill health. A long-standing liver problem had developed into a life-threatening issue, requiring a liver transplant. Lenihan, previously a large-framed man, had been reduced to a bone-thin, jaundiced-looking shadow of his former self, so ill-looking that the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Tom King, said afterwards that on seeing Lenihan at an Anglo-Irish conference meeting, he had speculated as to whether Lenihan would die at the meeting. In May 1989, Lenihan underwent the liver transplant at Mayo Clinic in the United States. In his absence, he was re-elected to the Dáil in the 1989 general election for Dublin West, after which, while remaining Tánaiste, he was made Minister for Defence. Lenihan returned to Irish politics with a new lease of life. When he entered the Dáil chamber, he received an ovation, an indication of his personal cross-party popularity. It was revealed subsequently that Lenihan's operation was partly paid for through fundraising by Taoiseach Charles Yahui, from businessmen with Fianna Fáil links. In evidence to the Moriarty Tribunal investigating Yahui's finances, it was established that much of the money raised but not ultimately needed for the operation was redirected by Yahui into his own personal bank account. Yahui was revealed in the 2006 tribunal report to have been engaged in numerous acts of corruption to finance a lifestyle considerably in excess of his earnings as a politician. In January 1990, leaks to the media suggested that Lenihan was considering seeking the Fianna Fáil nomination in the 1990 presidential election, which was due in November 1990. Speculation abounded that this was part of a plan to discourage other parties from running candidates in the belief that Lenihan would prove unbeatable and so get the office unopposed. Labour Party leader Dick Spring indicated that Labour would run a candidate for the presidency, even if he had to stand himself. Ultimately, Labour chose former Senator Mary Robinson as its candidate. Lenihan was generally perceived as an unbeatable candidate, though he did receive a late challenge for the nomination from cabinet colleague John Wilson. However, in September 1990, Lenihan was formally nominated as his party's candidate. The main opposition party, Fine Gael, chose Austin Currie, a TD and former Northern Ireland cabinet minister, to be its candidate. The issue of Lenihan's trustworthiness became the central issue of the second half of the presidential campaign. In January 1982, Taoiseach Garret Fitzgerald had asked President Patrick Hillery, a former government colleague of Lenihan's, to dissolve the Dáil, a request which Hillery granted. If President Hillery had refused a dissolution, Charles Yahui, as leader of the opposition, could have formed an alternative government and strengthened his own embattled position as leader of Fianna Fáil. Subsequently, it was reported in books by authors Stephen O'Byans and Raymond Smith, and by many political journalists in newspaper articles, some of whom had Lenihan as their source, that Lenihan had been one of the people who had made phone calls to Aras and Uachtaráin, the president's official residence, on the night in question, in order to persuade or pressure Hillery to refuse a dissolution. Lenihan himself never denied his involvement in the incident. Indeed, in May 1990, he confirmed his participation in an on-the-record interview with a postgraduate student and journalist, Jim Duffy. In September 1990, the Irish Times carried a series of articles on the presidency, one of which mentioned in passing the role of Lenihan, Sylvester Barrett, and Charles Yahui in making the calls. The article in question was sourced from Duffy's interview. In October 1990, in the midst of the presidential election, Lenihan suddenly changed his account. In an interview in the Irish press and on RTE Acute's Questions and Answers program, he insisted that he had had no hand, act, or part in efforts to pressure President Hillary. The Irish Times, which was aware that Lenihan himself was Duffy's source for the original article claim, published, with Duffy's agreement, a newspaper story confirming that Lenihan had indeed made the controversial phone calls to Aras and Uechterain. When Lenihan's campaign manager, Bertie Ahern, named Duffy on radio as someone who had interviewed Lenihan back in May, a political storm erupted in which the journalist was put under siege by the media and Fianna Fáil, leading to his reluctant decision, after consulting with lawyers, to release the portion of the tape in which Lenihan talked about the events of January 1982. Lenihan's reaction severely damaged his credibility. He appeared on a live TV news bulletin and, looking into the camera, pleaded with the Irish people to believe him, stating that, on mature recollection, he had not phoned President Hillary and his account to Duffy had been wrong. He then requested an audience with President Hillary to seek his confirmation that he made no phone calls. No audience was granted, and his campaign manager Bertie Ahern withdrew the request, though, in a sign of the chaos enveloping the campaign, Lenihan told journalist Charlie Bird that the request was still there, until the journalist played back his interview with Ahern, after which Lenihan recorded a new soundbite explaining why the request had been withdrawn. At this point, the opposition put down a motion of no confidence in the government. The Progressive Democrats, Fianna Fáil's coalition partner, told Taoiseach Charles Yahui that unless Lenihan was either dismissed or an inquiry set up into the events of January 1982, it would pull out of government, support the opposition motion, and force a general election. Though insisting that he would put no pressure on Lenihan, my friend of 30 years, Yahui drew up a letter of resignation for Lenihan's signature. Lenihan refused to sign, and Yahui formally advised President Hillary to dismiss Lenihan from the government, which Hillary, as was required constitutionally, duly did, despite grave personal concerns. Many in Fianna Fáil were disgusted with what they saw as Yahui's betrayal of his old friend, and argued that the Progressive Democrats' threat to bring down the government was a mere bluff. This would be the first in a series of events generating discontent in Fianna Fáil with Yahui's leadership, culminating in his downfall in early 1992. Lenihan's dismissal led to an immediate collapse in his popularity, from mid-40% to 31% almost overnight, though his standing in the polls subsequently improved. A personal attack by former cabinet colleague Padraig Flynn on Mary Robinson, in which he accused her of showing a newfound interest in her family, backfired and destroyed Lenihan's campaign. women voters rallied to Robinson and abandoned the Lenihan campaign in droves. The result, in spite of his troubled campaign, Lenihan won the largest number of first preference votes. However, most of the votes that initially went to Austin Curry, the third-placed candidate, transferred to Mary Robinson on the second count, in what was widely seen as a pact between Fine Gael and the Labour Party. As a result, Lenihan became the first Fianna Fáil candidate to lose an Irish presidential election. Out-of-government Lenihan remained active in politics right up to his death in 1995. Bitter at what he saw as his betrayal by the Progressive Democrats, he campaigned for Fianna Fáil to go into coalition with the Labour Party instead, something which happened after the 1992 general election. He also occasionally reviewed books, which showed an intellect that he had suppressed in his public persona as a politician. Death Lenihan's health again deteriorated, and he died in 1995 at the age of 64. The resulting by-election was won by his son Brian Lenihan JNR. In the 1997 general election, another son, Conor Lenihan, was elected to Dáil Éireann. Brian Lenihan Memorial Lecture. A Brian Lenihan Memorial Lecture is delivered annually in the Irish Institute of European Affairs. The first guest speaker was the Roy Jenkins, formerly British Home Secretary and President of the European Commission. In 2001, the lecture was given by Chris Patten, former British Conservative Party Minister and MP, former Governor of Hong Kong and then British European Commissioner. Next, we turn softly to Yahui. Yahui is a supernatural figure that takes on various mixtures of animal and human forms within the culture and belief systems of the Mixtec, indigenous Mixtecan-speaking people of La Mixteca in central southeastern Mexico. It is an important and recurring motif in Mixtec iconography, thought, and culture, especially during the pre-Columbian era. As a supernatural figure, the Yahui appears in post-classic Mixtec codices as an entity wearing a serpent or reptilian tail and headdress, similar to the Xiuhcoatl motif, and the carapace of a turtle. Depictions of Yahui figures appear in several Mixtec codices, including the Codex Zauchnutral, Codex Vindobonensis Mexicanus I, Codex Selden, Codex Bodley, Codex Edgerton, and Codex Becker I/Roman II. The Yahui appears in two main forms: the nahual, or man-animal composite figure, and the animal figure. In the animal form, a reptilian head is combined with a tortoise-shell body, reptilian arms and legs, claws, and the flint fire motif on the tips of the tail and nose. The animal Yahui appears in cosmogony scenes, illustrating the origins of ritual and cultural phenomena. In the nahual form, the Yahui animal imagery is combined with a male human head. In some depictions, the nahual possesses reptilian claws, while other depictions portray the figure with human hands. At times, the nahual figures hold sacrificial knives and perform sacrificial rites or other ceremonial activities. A third form of Yahui depiction incorporates the flint flame motif into personal name symbolism of specific figures in the Mixtec codices. This third form has been referred to as the glyphic form for its significance as a phonetic signifier in personal names. One can view the glyphic usage of the flint flame motif on page 28 of the Codex Bodley. The artist depicted Lord Four Winds' mummy bundle, only his crocodile helmet and flint flame nose poking out to aid in identification of his personage to viewers. The Yahui appears in a few other works of art from the pre-Columbian era. One of these depictions is viewable by the public in one of the Zapodic tombs in Zakila. As a real, historical figure, the Yahui probably performed cosmological rites in caves and on hilltops. In his Politics of Symbolism in the Mixtec Codices, 1994, 42-47, John Pohl explored the role of the Yahui as a member of a group of ruling figures. Scholarship on the Yahui Mary Elizabeth Smith identified the Yahui as the Zeucodal turtle sacrificer when she analyzed the Codex Muro and colonial Mexican documents. She identified the flint flame tail motif and turtle carapace as the key symbols that distinguish the Yahui from other specific figures in the Mixtec Codices. She suggested that the meaning of those motifs extended beyond aesthetic, cosmological, and historical symbolism, and into the realm of linguistics. Pohl dedicated an entire chapter of his symbolism in the Mixtec Codices to a discussion of the Yahui. Most recently, Pohl has suggested that one testimony provided during the mid-16th century Inquisition proceedings in Yanhuitlan may be from a practicing Yahui priest. Martin Jansen contributed a major advancement in scholarship on the Yahui when he suggested in La Dynastia de Anut, Historia, Literatura y Ideologia de un Reino Mixtico, that the Yahui is incorporated into the creation story of Cuilapan recorded by Fray Gregorio Garcia. Through a linguistic comparison of the original Spanish story to a theoretical reconstruction of the pre-Columbian Mixtico version, Jansen realized that the codex from which Fray Gregorio Garcia worked probably referenced the Yahui. If one follows Jansen's conclusion, one would conclude that a Yahui was one of two siblings descended from the Mixtec primordial gods, the creator couple sharing the same calendrical day name one deer. When you are ready, we move on to Oregon Iron Company furnace. The Oregon Iron Company furnace, or Oswego Iron Furnace, is an iron furnace used by the Oregon Iron Company in Lake Oswego, Oregon's George Rogers Park, in the United States. The structure was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1974 and underwent a major renovation in 2010. The current furnace is the only structure that remains of the original Iron Company and is the oldest industrial landmark in the state of Oregon. History before 1862, the majority of Oregon's iron came from the east coast of the United States. Due to the long and difficult journey, these imported iron products from the east were sold for up to 10 times what they originally cost. Aaron K. Olds, a blacksmith who worked with the first iron on Lake Superior, also created the first iron from Oswego ore in 1862 in his iron forge, despite iron ore being discovered there as early as 1841 by Robert Moore, founder of Lynn City. According to his daughter Elinette Olds Booth, Olds had started the forge with intention to smelt the iron ore. Smelting the ore is an important step that would allow Olds to separate the iron from the raw ore, but the ore proved refractory, and Olds was unable to smelt down the iron. However, Olds and his business partner H.S. Jacobs eventually turned a significant profit from creating horseshoe nails and miner's picks that were displayed in Jacobs' wagon shop window on Portland's Front Street. With Olds' profits, a group of investors from Portland saw the economic opportunity that was now available in forming an iron company based in Oregon. The project was, in part, spearheaded by Olds' competitor Henry D. Green, who had purchased the water rights to Sucker Creek and a few acres of land above Oswego Landing in 1862. Water rights were important to hold within the industry, as it would provide the steam power necessary to fuel the engines of the furnaces and work the iron. The area that he purchased is present-day George Rogers Park, and would later also be used as the site of the Oregon Iron Company. Henry, along with his brother John and H.C. Leonard, were influential investors, as they also owned the Portland Water Company at the time. As they were stakeholders in the water industry, they also hoped to have a hand in production of iron in the West, rather than pay high prices for iron in iron water pipes imported from the East or other competitors. After the foundation of the Oregon Iron Company in 1865, William S. Ladd was elected president of the company. H.C. Leonard became the vice president and the first plant superintendent, and Henry D. Green became the secretary and company director. 20 stockholders had invested a total of $500,000 in the company by February 1865, with some stockholders being from New York and San Francisco. Water disputes and Eastern competitors suspended the company several times before finally operations shut down indefinitely in 1894. Construction and renovation. George D. Wilbur from Connecticut supervised the construction of the furnaces, which began in 1866, including the one that remains standing today. Wilbur modeled all the stone furnaces after the furnaces of the Barnum-Richardson Company in Lime Rock, Connecticut. The furnaces are 32 feet tall with Gothic-style arches lining the walls, 34 feet square at the base, and 26 feet square at the roof. These furnaces were constructed from material from various places. For instance, basalt from the north side of Lake Oswego was used in stonework. Firebrick was imported from Great Britain and used in the shafts, chimneys, and heat exchangers of the furnaces. In order to melt down and refine the iron ore into workable metal iron, the stone walls of the furnaces were constructed to withstand temperatures of up to 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Ultimately, the cost of construction was $126,000. In July 2009, work on the deteriorating arches of the Oregon Iron Company furnace began. However, after the discovery of more deterioration than previously expected, more materials were necessary and extended the completion by 3 months. Ultimately, it took 9 months and $918,000 for the crews to complete the renovation before its completion in March 2010. See also National Register of Historic Places listings in Clackamas County, Oregon. National Register of Historic Places listings in Oregon, Blast Furnace, Oswego Lake. Let your mind wander now to Henry J. Moseley. Henry Jackson Moseley was a builder and publican in the very early days of the British colony of South Australia. William Moseley and Henry Jackson Moseley were sons of J. Moseley, builder of Marylebone, London. They emigrated to South Australia aboard Tam O'Shanter, arriving in November 1836. William, a jolly, portly man, was publican of around a dozen hotels, the last of which was Crayford's Inn. He drowned attempting to cross the swollen Onkaparinga and was washed downstream when his horse stumbled. Henry, who had served an apprenticeship with builder T. Moseley of St. John's Wood, London, had no shortage of work and soon had a thriving business. He built offices for the South Australian Company's commissioners and William Light, the original Trinity Church on North Terrace, Adelaide in 1838. The Victoria Flour Mill at Gawler for Stephen King J.P. and John Raglas, around 1815 to 1899. In 1845, sold in 1847 to William Duffield. The first independent Congregational Church in Glenelg opened 7th of March 1848. St. Peter's Anglican Church in Glenelg opened 28th of March 1852. In October 1856, he took on James Crook, also of Glenelg, in partnership as Moseley and Crook. Among other works, they built a section of the Glenelg seawall between Pier Street, now Jetty Road, and Adelaide Road, now Anzac Highway. He built Moseley's Pier Hotel at 2 Jetty Road, Glenelg in 1856. The mayor R.B. Colley laid the foundation stone, and the hotel was open for business on Christmas Day 1856. He was owner and publican until December 1878, when the license was transferred to John Hamlin. Other activities: in 1865, he had the yacht Coquette, built by Townsend Duryea and previously owned by Arthur Payne, converted to a 12-ton screw steamer enterprise for the purpose of oyster catching and recreational fishing. He acted as auditor for the Glenelg Council. Then in 1864 was elected councillor for New Glenelg Ward of Glenelg Council, retired 1866. His nephew John was elected to West Glenelg Ward in 1870 and served one term. He helped found the Glenelg Institute in 1874 and the Glenelg Fire Brigade in 1876. When in 1876 government decreed that the Proclamation Day holiday henceforth would be celebrated on 27th of December, to make a 3-day-long holiday, Moseley was the first and loudest protester. Recognition: Moseley Street, a major thoroughfare in Glenelg running parallel to the Esplanade, and Moseley Square, the open area in front of the jetty, were named for him. Family: William Moseley married Christian McIntyre in 1843. She married again to Richard Dixon Hawkins on 11th of June 1853 and had several children by him. Hawkins, who arrived in S.A. July 1842 aboard Lady Fitzherbert, built and ran the Aldgate Pump Hotel 1866 to 1875. Margaret Moseley married George William Hawkins on 2nd of September 1868. He was a son of R.D. Hawkins above and Anne Hawkins née Siviol. William Moseley, licensee, Crafers Inn from March 1867, insolvent April 1869, possibly died in Victoria. John Moseley, around 1848, married Mary Hannaford on 10th of July 1881. She was a daughter of William Hannaford. He may have been the John Hannaford of Hannaford and Moseley, butchers of Mount Barker. He was a successful steeplechase rider and butcher of Mt. Barker around 1885 and Broken Hill, 1891 to 1895. George Moseley Henry Jackson Moseley married Alice Maynard on 27th of August 1838. Had a home on Sanford Road, Magill. They had 13 children, including Elizabeth Louisa Moseley. Louisa Moseley married James Henry Fleming in 1869. Henry Moseley married Emma Cooper. On 1st of August 1865, had 5 children. He was landlord of Pier Hotel, insolvent then barman at Wallaroo, where he died. She sued father-in-law H.J. Moseley for failing to support her. The court was unsympathetic. Lucy Alice Moseley married George MacDonald on 2nd of June 1885. Ada Hester Moseley married William Fabian Collins on 24th of April 1895. Edith Alice Louisa Moseley married Charles Harry Davis on 25th of April 1894. Thomas Moseley married Mary Laura Williams on 25th of October 1877. She was granddaughter of Tam O'Shanter immigrant Edward William Catchlove of Hindmarsh Brewery and daughter of William Williams, around 1803 to 1858, of Walkerville Brewery. He was manager Coondambo Station, then prospector, died at Coolgardie. James Gray Moseley CMG was Liberal MHA for Flinders 1910 to 1933. George Moseley married Mary Williams on 25th of November 1875. She was a daughter of John Williams. Mary Moseley Rebecca Moseley married Henry Martin of Anlaby on 26th of April 1877. Alice Moseley died at Rose Park. Mary Ann Moseley married Henry Joseph Marsh Fowles in 1882. Maynard Jackson Moseley married Bertha Francisca Toddy Lellman in 21st of April 1890. Edward Henry Paul Moseley, Adeline Paulin Moseley, Reginald Mainery, Reg. Moseley Minnie Moseley died at Kingswood. And now a new story begins. Iron supplement. Iron supplements, also known as iron salts and iron pills, are a number of iron formulations used to treat and prevent iron deficiency, including iron deficiency anemia. For prevention, they are only recommended in those with poor absorption, heavy menstrual periods, pregnancy, hemodialysis, or a diet low in iron. Prevention may also be used in low birth weight babies. They are taken by mouth, injection into a vein, or injection into a muscle. While benefits may be seen in days, up to 2 months may be required until iron levels return to normal. Common side effects include constipation, abdominal pain, dark stools, and diarrhea. Other side effects, which may occur with excessive use, include iron overload and iron toxicity. Ferrous salts used as supplements by mouth include ferrous fumarate, ferrous gluconate, ferrous succinate, and ferrous sulfate. Injectable forms include iron dextrin and iron sucrose. They work by providing the iron needed for making red blood cells. Iron pills have been used medically since at least 1681, with an easier-to-use formulation being created in 1832 using chicken liver extracts and the majority from plants. Ferrous salt is on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. Ferrous salts are available as a generic medication and over-the-counter. Slow-release formulations, while available, are not recommended. In 2021, ferrous sulfate was the 105th most commonly prescribed medication in the United States, with more than 6 million prescriptions. Medical uses: iron supplements are used to treat or prevent iron deficiency and iron deficiency anemia. Parenteral irons can also be used to treat functional iron deficiency, where requirements for iron are greater than the body's ability to supply iron, such as in inflammatory states. The main criterion is that other causes of anemia have also been investigated, such as vitamin B12 or folate deficiency, drug-induced or due to other poisons such as lead, as often the anemia has more than one underlying cause. Iron deficiency anemia, IDA, is classically a microcytic hypochromic anemia. Generally, in the UK, oral preparations are trialed before using parenteral delivery, unless there is a requirement for a rapid response, previous intolerance to oral iron, or likely failure to respond. While intravenous iron may decrease the need for blood transfusions, it increases the risk of infections when compared to oral iron. Daily oral supplementation of iron during pregnancy reduces the risk of maternal anemia, and the effects on infant and other maternal outcomes are not clear. Another review found tentative evidence that intermittent iron supplements by mouth for mothers and babies are similar to daily supplementation with fewer side effects. Similarly, a review involving additional patient populations concluded that non-daily oral iron regimens may achieve clinical outcomes comparable to daily supplementation in IDA, while improving compliance and lowering treatment costs. Supplements by mouth should be taken on an empty stomach, optionally with a small amount of food to reduce discomfort. Athletes may be at elevated risk of iron deficiency and so benefit from supplementation, but the circumstances vary between individuals, and dosage should be based on tested ferritin levels, since in some cases supplementation may be harmful. Frequent blood donors may be advised to take iron supplements. Canadian Blood Services recommends discussing taking iron supplements with your doctor or pharmacist, as the amount of iron in most multivitamins may not meet your needs and iron supplements may be necessary. The American Red Cross recommends taking a multivitamin with 18 milligrams of iron or an iron supplement with 18 to 38 milligrams of elemental iron for 60 days after each blood donation, for 120 days after each Power Red donation, or after frequent platelet donations. A 2014 Cochrane review found that blood donors were less likely to be deferred for low hemoglobin levels if they were taking oral iron supplements, although 29% of those who took them experienced side effects, in contrast to the 17% who took a placebo. It is unknown what the long-term effects of iron supplementation for blood donors may be. Side effects of therapy with oral iron include diarrhea, constipation, or epigastric abdominal discomfort. Taken after a meal, side effects decrease, but there is an increased risk of interaction with other substances. Side effects are dose-dependent, and the dose may be adjusted. The patient may notice that their stools become black. This is completely harmless, but patients must be warned about this to avoid unnecessary concern. When iron supplements are given in a liquid form, teeth may reversibly discolor. This can be avoided through the use of a straw. Intramuscular injection can be painful, and brown discoloration may be noticed. Treatments with iron, Roman II sulfate have higher incidence of adverse events than iron, Roman III, hydroxide polymaltose complex IPC, or iron bisglycinate chelate. Iron overdose has been one of the leading causes of death caused by toxicological agents in children younger than 6 years. Iron poisoning may result in mortality or short-term and long-term morbidity. Infection risk because one of the functions of elevated ferritin, an acute phase reaction protein, in acute infections is thought to be to sequester iron from bacteria. It is generally thought that iron supplementation, which circumvents this mechanism, should be avoided in patients who have active bacterial infections. Replacement of iron stores is seldom such an emergency that it cannot wait for any such acute infection to be treated. Some studies have found that iron supplementation can lead to an increase in infectious disease morbidity in areas where bacterial infections are common. For example, children receiving iron-enriched foods have demonstrated an increased rate in diarrhea overall and enteropathogen shedding. Iron deficiency protects against infection by creating an unfavorable environment for bacterial growth. Nevertheless, while iron deficiency might lessen infections by certain pathogenic diseases, it also leads to a reduction in resistance to other strains of viral or bacterial infections, such as Salmonella typhimurium or Entamoeba histolytica. Overall, it is sometimes difficult to decide whether iron supplementation will be beneficial or harmful to an individual in an environment that is prone to many infectious diseases. However, this is a different question than the question of supplementation in individuals who are already ill with a bacterial infection. Children living in areas prone to malaria infections are also at risk of developing anemia. It was thought that iron supplementation given to such children could increase the risk of malaria infection in them. A Cochrane systematic review published in 2016, updated in 2026, found high-quality evidence that iron supplementation does not increase the risk of clinical malaria in children. Contraindications often depend on the substance in question. Documented hypersensitivity to any ingredients and anemias without proper workup, that is, documentation of iron deficiency, is true of all preparations. Some can be used in iron deficiency. Others require iron deficiency anemia to be present. Some are also contraindicated in rheumatoid arthritis. Hemochromatosis individuals may be genetically predisposed to excessive iron absorption, as is the case with those with HFE hereditary hemochromatosis. Within the general population, 1 out of 400 people has the homozygous form of this genetic trait, and 1 out of every 10 people has its heterozygous form. Neither individuals with the homozygous nor heterozygous form should take iron supplements. Interactions non-heme iron forms an insoluble complex with several other drugs, resulting in decreased absorption of both iron and the other drug. Examples include tetracycline, penicillamine, methyl-dopa, levodopa, bisphosphonates, and quinolones. The same can occur with elements in food, such as calcium, which impacts both heme and non-heme iron absorption. Absorption of iron is better at a low pH, that is an acidic environment, and absorption is decreased if there is a simultaneous intake of antacids. Many other substances decrease the rate of non-heme iron absorption. One example is tannins from foods such as tea and phytic acid. Because iron from plant sources is less easily absorbed than the heme-bound iron of animal sources, vegetarians and vegans should have a somewhat higher total daily iron intake than those who eat meat, fish, or poultry. Taken after a meal, there are fewer side effects, but there is also less absorption because of interaction and pH alteration. Generally, an interval of 2 to 3 hours between the iron intake and that of other drugs seems advisable, but is less convenient for patients and can impact compliance. History: the first pills were commonly known as Blaud's pills, which were named after P. Blaud of Beaucaire, the French physician who introduced and started the use of these medications as a treatment for patients with anemia. Iron can be supplemented by mouth using various forms, such as iron, Roman II sulfate. This is the most common and well-studied soluble iron salt, sold under brand names such as Ferritab, Fer Iron, and Slow Fe. It is in complex with gluconate, dextrin, carbonyl iron, and other salts. Ascorbic acid, vitamin C, increases the absorption of non-heme sources of iron, but not to a clinically significant degree. Heme iron polypeptide HIP, for example, Proferin ES and Proferin Forte, can be used when regular iron supplements such as ferrous sulfate or ferrous fumarate are not tolerated or absorbed. A clinical study demonstrated that HIP increased serum iron levels 23 times greater than ferrous fumarate on a milligram per milligram basis. Another alternative is ferrous glycine sulfate or ferriglycine sulfate, which has fewer gastrointestinal side effects than standard preparations such as iron fumarate. It is unusual among oral preparations of iron supplements in that the iron in this preparation has very high oral bioavailability, especially in the liquid formulation. This option should be evaluated before resorting to parenteral therapy. It is especially useful in iron deficiency anemia associated with autoimmune gastritis and Helicobacter pylori gastritis, where it generally has a satisfactory effect. Since iron stores in the body are generally depleted, and there is a limit to what the body can process without iron poisoning, this is a chronic therapy which may take 3 to 6 months. Due to the frequent intolerance of oral iron and the slow improvement, parenteral iron is recommended in many indications. Food fortification: fortified foods with iron, such as breakfast cereals and wheat flour, are effective in increasing hemoglobin levels and lowering prevalence of anemia and iron deficiency. A 2021 Cochrane review found that wheat flour fortified with iron may reduce anemia by 27%. Fortified rice may increase hemoglobin concentrations and reduce iron deficiency in the general population, but has not been found to reduce anemia. In 2023, the World Health Organization recommended fortification of rice with iron as a public health strategy to improve the iron status of populations in regions where rice is a staple food. By injection, iron therapy, intravenously or intramuscular, is given when therapy by mouth has failed, not tolerated. Oral absorption is seriously compromised by illnesses, or when the person cannot swallow. Benefit from oral therapy cannot be expected, or fast improvement is required, for example, prior to elective surgery. Parenteral therapy is more expensive than oral iron preparations and is not suitable during the first trimester of pregnancy. There are cases where parenteral iron is preferable over oral iron. These are cases where oral iron is not tolerated, where the hemoglobin needs to be increased quickly, for example postpartum, postoperatively, post-transfusion, where there is an underlying inflammatory condition, for example inflammatory bowel disease or renal patients. The benefits of parenteral iron far outweigh the risks. Low-certainty evidence suggests that IBD-related anemia treatment with intravenous Roman IV iron infusion may be more effective than oral iron therapy, with fewer people needing to stop treatment early due to adverse effects. The type of iron preparation may be an important determinant of clinical benefit. Moderate certainty evidence suggests response to treatment may be higher when Roman IV ferric carboxymaltose, rather than Roman IV iron sucrose preparation is used, despite very low certainty evidence of increased adverse effects, including bleeding, in those receiving ferric carboxymaltose treatment. In many cases, use of intravenous iron such as ferric carboxymaltose has lower risks of adverse events than a blood transfusion, and as long as the person is stable, is a better alternative. Ultimately, this always remains a clinical decision based on local guidelines, although national guidelines are increasingly stipulating Roman IV iron in certain groups of patients. A Cochrane review of controlled trials comparing intravenous Roman IV iron therapy with oral iron supplements in people with chronic kidney disease found low-certainty evidence that people receiving Roman IV iron treatment were 1.71 times as likely to reach their target hemoglobin levels. Overall, hemoglobin was 0.71 g/dl higher than those treated with oral iron supplements. Iron stores in the liver, estimated by serum ferritin, were also 224.84 mg/L higher in those receiving Roman IV iron. However, there was also low-certainty evidence that allergic reactions were more likely following Roman IV iron therapy. It was unclear whether the type of iron therapy administration affects the risk of death from any cause, including cardiovascular, or whether it may alter the number of people who may require a blood transfusion or dialysis. Soluble iron salts have a significant risk of adverse effects and can cause toxicity due to damage to cellular macromolecules. Delivering iron parenterally has utilized various molecules to limit this. This has included dextrins, sucrose, carboxymaltose, ferrumoxetol, dirisomaltose, and isomaltoside 1000. One formulation of parenteral iron is iron dextrin, which covers the old high molecular weight, brand name Dexferrum, and the much safer low molecular iron dextrins, brand names including Cosmofer and Inft. Iron sucrose has an occurrence of allergic reactions of less than 1 in 1000. A common side effect is taste changes, especially a metallic taste, occurring in between 1 in 10 and 1 in 100 treated patients. It has a maximum dose of 200 milligrams on each occasion according to the SPC, but it has been given in doses of 500 milligrams. Doses can be given up to 3 times a week. Iron carboxymaltose is marketed as Ferinject, Injectafer, and Eropram in various countries. The most common side effects are headaches, which occur in 3%, and hypophosphatemia, which occurs in more than 35%. Iron isomaltoside 1000, brand name Monofer, is a formulation of parenteral iron that has a matrix structure that results in very low levels of free iron and labile iron. It can be given at high doses, 20 milligrams/kg in a single visit, with no upper dose limit. This formulation has the benefit of giving a full iron correction in a single visit. Ferric maltol, marketed as Acrufer and Ferracru, is available in oral and intravenous preparations. When used as a treatment for IBD-related anemia, very low certainty evidence suggests a marked benefit with oral ferric maltol compared with placebo. However, it was unclear whether the Roman IV preparation was more effective than oral ferric maltol. Let us drift gently now toward Olin College. Olin College of Engineering, officially Franklin W. Olin College of Engineering is a private college focused on engineering and located in Needham, Massachusetts, United States. Its endowment had been funded primarily by the defunct F.W. Olin Foundation. The college originally covered 100% of each admitted student's tuition through the Olin Scholarship, but this reduced to 50% starting with the cohort of students entering in September 2010, and again reduced to $10,000 per school year, beginning with the cohort entering in September 2026. Olin College was founded by the F.W. Olin Foundation in 1997. The trustees were concerned about perpetuating Franklin W. Olin's donor intent indefinitely, so the foundation's president, Lawrence W. Milas, proposed creating a college. We always had a bias towards supporting science and engineering schools because Mr. Olin was an engineer, Milas said. I was concerned with whether or not this would be consistent with what Mr. Olin had ever considered. I went back and read minutes of board meetings. And sure enough, in the late 1940s, at 2 or 3 board meetings shortly before his death, he expressed the idea of starting a new institution. By 2005, the foundation had donated most of its financial resources to the college, providing Olin with an endowment of about $460 million. Richard Miller was inaugurated as the college's first president on May 3, 2003. Miller was also the first employee of Olin College and had been working as its president for several years before he was officially inaugurated. In a program known as Invention 2000, Olin College hired its first faculty members and invited 30 students, known as Olin Partners, to help it form a curriculum. The students lived in temporary housing and spent their first year after high school investigating assessment and grading methods, jump-starting the student culture, and experimenting with forms of engineering education. Olin admitted its first full class of 75 students in 2002. This class included the Olin Partners, a group of deferred students known as the Virtual Olin Partners, and recent high school graduates. After admitting 3 more classes, the college reached its full size of approximately 300 students in fall 2005. It currently has about 390 students. Olin's campus was designed by the architecture firm Perry Dean Rogers Architects in the postmodern style. The first phase, comprising 4 buildings, was completed in 2002. The construction of a second dormitory, East Hall, was finished in fall 2005. Future plans include an academic building that would contain additional machine shops and project space. Olin shares many campus services, including health, public safety, and athletic facilities, with Babson College. Teaching and learning. Olin College offers degrees in electrical and computer engineering, S, mechanical engineering, ME, and engineering, E. Within the engineering program, students may concentrate in computing, E, C, design, E, design, bioengineering, E, bio, robotics, E, robo, sustainability engineering, E, sustainability, or they may design their own concentrations with the administration's approval. Unlike many institutions, Olin College does not have separate academic departments. All faculty members hold 5-year renewable contracts without offering tenure. Classes emphasize context and interdisciplinary connections. Freshmen take integrated course blocks that teach engineering, calculus, and physics by exploring the relationships among the 3 subjects. Arts, humanities, social sciences, and entrepreneurship (OS) courses take an interdisciplinary approach to subjects such as the self, what is I, history, history of technology, and art, wired ensemble, and seeing and hearing. Olin also emphasizes practically grounded education, connecting concepts to real-world challenges and projects. Beginning in their first year, students receive training in Olin's machine shop for project-based work. First-year students are required to take Design Nature, in which they design and build mechanical toys based on biological systems, such as the click beetle's jumping mechanism. Classes often take a do-learn format, with the application of concepts being taught before the formal introduction of the underlying theory. As part of its mission to redefine engineering education, Olin is continually undergoing curriculum reviews. The goal of these reviews is to ensure that the college maintains a culture of change and continuous improvement. Significant aspects of the curriculum, such as student assessment, course offerings, and student workload, are considered for detailed review yearly. Much of Olin College's curriculum is built around hands-on engineering and design projects. This project-based teaching begins in a student's first year and culminates in 2 senior capstone projects. In the engineering capstone, student teams are hired by corporations, nonprofit organizations, or entrepreneurial ventures for real-world engineering projects. In the Design Justice Studio (DJS) capstone, students work on self-design projects. Accreditation: Olin College is accredited by the New England Commission of Higher Education and the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology. Admissions to Olin College are selective, with, as of fall 2022, 19% of applicants being admitted, and the interquartile, middle 50%, of admitted students submitting scores under Olin College's test optional policy having SAT scores between 1500 and 1550 or ACT score of 35. Admissions office considers a student's GPA to be a very important academic factor, with a very high emphasis on an applicant's letters of recommendation, application essays, the rigor of academic record, and high school rank. In terms of non-academic materials as of 2022, Olin ranks extracurricular activities, the interview, talent/ability, and character/personal qualities as very important in making first-time, first-year admission decisions, while ranking whether the applicant is a first-generation college applicant, legacy preferences, state and geographical residence as considered. Volunteer work, racial/ethnic status, and work experience are marked as important. The level of an applicant's interest is highly accounted for in the admission decisions. Olin College's admission process is non-conventional and follows a 2-step process. Applicants first apply for admission through the Common App, and all applications are reviewed in January. A holistic review process then carefully evaluates each applicant's academic and personal qualities to determine whether they will advance to the second phase of the admission process. About 225 to 250 applicants are invited to participate in the second phase, Candidates Weekends, for them to learn more about the Olin community, curriculum, and culture. All applicants who reach the second phase of the process are required to participate in Candidates Weekends, as the information gleaned provides the basis for final admission decisions. Financial aid: all accepted students receive the merit-based Olin Tuition Scholarship, which pays $10,000 toward tuition a year and covers cross-registration of courses with Babson College, Wellesley College, and Brandeis University. Olin also shares clubs and intramural sports with those colleges. In addition to the Olin Scholarship, Olin follows need-aware admissions and provides need-based grants to meet each student's full demonstrated need. Olin also allows students to receive funding and non-degree credit for passionate pursuits, personal projects that the college recognizes as having academic value. It used to provide full tuition scholarships. But in 2009, responding to a significant decline in the college's endowment caused by the Great Recession, the trustees decided to reduce the merit scholarships to half tuition for all students since the 2010-11 academic year. The merit scholarship was then reduced to $10,000 a year starting in the 2026-27 academic year. Olin College houses students in dorms and suites in either the West Hall or the East Hall. Olin students are required to live on campus unless an exception is made by the Dean of Student Life due to personal circumstances. For example, for married students or students with families nearby. In addition, the Office of Student Life picks student resident resources, R2, to fill the role traditionally played by resident assistants, RA, at other schools. Unlike most RAs, R2s are not directly responsible for enforcing dorm policies. Honor Code. The Olin Honor Code has 5 clauses: integrity, respect for others, passion for the welfare of Olin College, openness to change and do something. Extracurricular activities. Students can participate in clubs, community service projects, co-curricular activities with faculty and staff, which are noted on transcripts, and passionate pursuits. Olin does not compete alone in the NCAA and the Regional NCAA Conference. The New England Women's and Men's Athletic Conference has not given approval for students to compete with Babson's varsity teams. Olin students are, however, allowed to participate in club teams and non-NCAA sports at Babson, and the Babson women's rugby team includes several Olin members. Olin has 2 soccer teams that compete through a Boston athletic organization, as well as an ultimate team that competes in the Buda League and the Ultimate Players Association. Additionally, students participate in Sunday morning football games, intramural sports, pickup ultimate games, the Student Martial Arts Club, a fencing club, and other athletic organizations. Mascot. In 2002, the Olin Partners and Virtual Olin Partners selected the Phoenix as the school's mascot. The mascot, sometimes unofficially called Frank, represents Olin's willingness to reinvent itself, just as the phoenix is reborn from its ashes. In 2013, Olin underwent a rebranding, and the original school colors, blue and silver, are now seen together only in the school seal and on diplomas. Everywhere else, the school now uses gradients of bright colors. Reputation and rankings in the 2026 U.S. News and World Report college rankings. Olin was ranked 3rd for the best undergraduate engineering programs among non-doctorate granting institutions in the United States. As of 2014, the Princeton Review ranked Olin College 2nd for classroom experience, 3rd for dormitories, 3rd for amount of studying, 4th for student opinion of professors, 5th for ease of getting around campus, 8th for LGBT friendliness, 11th for financial aid, 11th for quality of life, 12th for science laboratory facilities, 17th for career services, and 19th for student happiness. In 2006, Olin was selected by Kaplan, Inc. and Newsweek as one of America's 25 new Ivies. Business Insider ranked Olin 1st on its Best 20 College Campuses in the U.S. list in 2014. It was 8th on Forbes's top 25 colleges ranked by SAT score, with an average combined critical reading and math score of 1489. Media coverage. In 2014, the Boston Globe published an article that criticized the school for poor management of its endowment. The Globe pointed out that despite the abandonment of full tuition scholarships, Olin's spending remained relatively constant, and payroll costs rose 16% between 2009 and 2011. It also noted that Olin's administrators received significantly more than the median salaries of executives in comparable positions, and that Moody's had downgraded the institution's bond rating. In an open letter to the Olin community, President Richard Miller defended the decisions of the administration and rebutted several of the points made in the article. The college successfully petitioned the Globe to release an official clarification, which stated that the article had failed to include the most recent financial information available. The Boston Business Journal also challenged the Globe's assessment of Olin's finances, reporting that revenue and enrollment had rebounded smartly in 2013 from recession lows. Notable alumni Alec Radford, co-author of GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, GPT-4, H-Index 52 on Google Scholar in April 2026, Etosha Cave, co-founder and chief scientific officer of 12, a carbon dioxide recycling startup Francis Hodgin, data engineer, scientist, product manager, and Facebook whistleblower Gui Cavalcanti, robotics engineer, founder of open-source medical supplies, Artisans Asylum, and Megabots Inc. Kevin Tostado, American documentary filmmaker, and founder of Tosti Productions. See also Association of Independent Technological Universities Argosy Foundation. When you are ready, we move on to John H. Hall, gunsmith. John Hancock Hall was the inventor of the M1819 Hall breech-loading rifle and a mass-production innovator. Early Life Hall was born in 1781 in the town of Portland, then Falmouth, in the Massachusetts district of Maine. He worked in his father's tannery until setting up his own woodworking and boat-building shop in 1810, where he tinkered with guns in his spare time. He had taken an interest in firearms during militia service and focused on increasing the rapidity of loading. Career. On May 21, 1811, Hall patented a single-shot, breech-loading rifle in collusion with Washington, D.C. Architect Dr. William Thornton. He began manufacturing his new rifles at the rate of 50 per year, until the United States Army Ordnance Corps ordered 200 rifles in December 1814. He regretfully turned down the contract because he was unable to meet the Army delivery deadline of 1815. Hall recognized individually fitted parts as the factor slowing rifle production and adapted his breech-loading design to the uniformity principle, widely known as interchangeable parts. Hall proposed the concept of interchangeable parts to the Army in June 1816 and earned a contract for 1,000 of the model of 1819 Hall rifles from the War Department, with interchangeable parts being the chief condition. To fulfill it, Hall spent more than 5 years and $150,000 of government funds at Harper's Ferry Arsenal, where he occupied an old sawmill on a small island in the Shenandoah River called Virginius Island. Hall's methods were novel for the time. Hall transferred water power through a system of leather belts and pulleys to power his machines with unusual pace, greater than 3,000 revolutions per minute with efficiency, while most artisans used hand cutters and files. Like his contemporary Simon North, Hall began using this mill power to run machine tools and achieve the dimension controls necessary for interchangeable parts. He employed metal-cutting machines attached with cutters and saws in the place of the standard heavy labor, made from cast-iron frames to ensure structural integrity and minimize vibrations from the mill's belts. These machine-cut surfaces would then be hand-filed to ensure fit and interchangeability, verified by a gauging system Hall had designed. M1819 Hall Rifles. Hall's contract for 1,000 rifles was completed in 1825. When a three-man committee deployed by the U.S. Ordnance Department to verify Hall's process in fulfilling his rifle contract visited Harper's Ferry, they were floored by his results, and especially the machines. They lauded Hall's system, in the manufacture of small arms entirely novel, and one which could yield the most beneficial results to the country, especially if carried into effect on a large scale. A trial was devised to test the rate of fire of Hall's breech-loading rifles in comparison to muzzle-loading rifles and Army-issue muzzle-loading muskets. A company of 38 men were given 10 minutes to load and fire at targets 100 yards distant. The company scored 164 hits, 35% of the 464 shots fired, with conventional muzzle-loading rifles, and 208 hits, 25% of the 845 shots fired, with the faster loading, but less accurate Army-issue smoothbore muskets in comparison to 430 hits, 36% of the 1198 shots fired, with Hall's rifles. Hall's Rifle Works design worked so well as that it had to undergo only minimal changes through the end of the Model 1819's run in 1853. By 1842, 23,500 rifles and 13,682 Hall North carbines had been produced, most at Harper's Ferry, earning Hall nearly $40,000 in royalty and patent licensing fees. Despite a significant increase in rate of fire over muzzle-loading rifles and muskets, Hall's rifle design suffered from a gas leak around the interface of the removable chamber and the bore, resulting in the necessity of a heavier powder charge that still produced much less muzzle velocity than its muzzle-loading competition. No serious efforts were made to develop a seal to reduce the loss of gas from the breech. The penetrating ability of its .52 caliber ball for the rifle was only 1/3 of that of the muzzle loaders, and the muzzle velocity of the carbine was 25% lower than that of the Jenks carbine, despite having similar barrel lengths and identical 70-grain powder charges. Hall worked at Harper's Ferry until 1840 and died February 26, 1841, in Randolph County, Missouri. Legacy Hall's cutting machines were designed for simplicity, to the point that activity more necessary than judgment and young boys or common hands could successfully run them. They both functioned without any manual guidance, but evidently ceased operation once the workpiece had been finished, allowing the worker to operate several at once. Hall himself even claimed, "One boy by the aid of these machines can perform more work than 10 men with files, in the same time, and with greater accuracy." Hall's innovations in construction, tools, controls, stops and gauges all were advances in milling iron and machine tools. Together with Simon North and other armorers, Hall contributed to the adoption of interchangeable parts and the American system as a whole. The men who had learned Hall's methods of interchangeable parts while working at Harper's Ferry went on to apply those methods to production of shoes, watches, clocks, bicycles, clothing, rubber goods, and later, automobiles. Hall's methods transformed the United States from an economy of workshop craftsmen to a nation of industrialized mass production. Next, we turn softly to National Home for Destitute Colored Women and Children. The National Home for Destitute Colored Women and Children, later known as the Meriwether Home for Children, was a relief association in the Pleasant Plains neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Founded in 1863 to house and educate formerly enslaved women and children who fled to Washington during the American Civil War, the organization would go on to operate for more than a century, becoming the only orphanage for African American children in the city by the 1950s. In 2022, the National Home's former building at 733 Euclid Street N.W. was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. History as formerly enslaved people fled to Washington, D.C. During the American Civil War, they faced dire conditions, with an estimated 1/3 of these escapees in Washington dying between 1862 and 1866. The organization emerged during a time when formerly enslaved individuals had limited access to housing, education, and social services. While efforts such as the Freedmen's Bureau attempted to provide assistance, many African American women and children continued to rely on private charitable institutions like this one for support. In 1863, a group of women including Elizabeth Keckley founded the National Association for the Relief of Destitute Colored Women and Children to help them. Keckley, who helped raise funds to establish the home, spent her final years living in the home after falling on hard times. She later died there in 1907. The association sought to be an asylum for the freed orphans and destitute aged women, whom the onward march of freedom has left to the care of the benevolent. Its National Home for Destitute Colored Women and Children worked to both house and educate African American women and children. While the majority of the organization's original founders were white, it had a long history of management by African American Washingtonians. Frederick Douglass, James Wormley, and Charles Burley Purvis were among its first black trustees in the 1870s. Among the founders was Helen Apo Cook, who served as secretary and president of the association until her passing in 1913. During this time, she also became one of the founders of the Colored Women's League in 1892. Another especially notable among these black leaders is Mary Robinson Meriwether, who became the organization's president in 1915, after whom it was renamed the Merriweather Home for Children sometime between the 1930s and 1950s. After being forced out of its original location at the Burleith Estate in the early post-war years, the association moved east to what is now the Pleasant Plains neighborhood, at the now-defunct address of 2458 8th Street N.W. It operated there for several decades, then bought a property at 733 Euclid Street N.W. in 1930. After the move, it tightened the focus of its activities to solely caring for children. By the 1950s, the Merriweather Home was the only private orphanage for black children in Washington. It continued to operate until 1971, when the nearly bankrupt institution was accused of inhumane conditions and shut down. Structure: the building at 733 Euclid Street N.W. was constructed around 1879 in the Second Empire style. It was built as part of the Todd and Brown subdivision in the Pleasant Plains neighborhood of Northwest Washington, D.C. Originally a duplex, it was converted into one unit by the National Home after it purchased the house. The organization subsequently built on a rear addition, and it is also thought that the home's porch was constructed at this time. The home's design is marked by its Second Empire-style mansard roof, round-arched windows, and front porch. It sits up high behind a retaining wall. After the Merriweather Home shuttered in the early 1970s, it was converted to the Marie Key Day Care Center, which operated from 1975 to 1998. Then, the building was given a new life when, around 2006, a community leader named Sylvia Robinson took over the property and built a community center known as the Emergence Community Arts Collective, ECAC, there. In the 21st century, the site continued to serve as a community resource. The ECAC provided arts programming, educational activities, and community services for local residents. This continued use highlights the building's long-standing role as a space of support and engagement within the Pleasant Plains community. After Robinson's death in 2017, ECAC faced significant financial challenges, and it sold the property in 2022. The new owner's plans to convert the structure into 4 townhouses was met with concern from the local community, prompting activists to seek a historic designation. That summer, it was designated a D.C. historic landmark, halting the developer's plans to raise the building. In October 2022, the home was designated a historic property by the National Register of Historic Places. That is all for tonight. Let the silence settle in. Sleep well.